Put another way, these bills will provide families with, as my dad used to say, just a little more breathing room. That's because the Build Back Better framework lowers your bills for health care, child care, prescription drugs, and preschool. And families get a tax cut. That's how you end some of the anxiety people are feeling about the economy. That's how we give people some breathing room.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Friday, November 5th, 2021. Welcome to day 290. The House of Representatives will vote on the $1 trillion infrastructure bill tonight after abandoning an agreement with progressive Democrats to first vote on a separate education, healthcare, and climate package. Party leaders began the day hoping to hold a vote on the social spending legislation, followed by a vote on the infrastructure package. But a small group of moderates, however, refused to support the social safety net, climate, and tax package without a cost analysis from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which could take more than a week. The opposition forced Speaker Nancy Pelosi to change course, announcing that the House would first vote on the infrastructure bill, which had already passed in the Senate, and then take a procedural vote to begin debate on the Build Back Better bill, with hopes of passing it by Thanksgiving. Progressives rejected Pelosi's move to vote on the infrastructure bill without the broader social spending plan, saying, if our 6 colleagues still want to wait for the CBO review, we would agree to give them that time, after which point we can vote on both bills together. Pelosi responded and said that the bipartisan infrastructure bill was too important to put off any longer, and that she believes that a large number of progressives actually plan to support the bill, saying the agenda that we are advancing is transformative and historic, hence challenging. Pelosi can't afford to lose more than 3 votes unless some Republicans vote for the infrastructure bill. Earlier in the day, Biden called on House members to advance both bills, which total nearly $3 trillion in investments in infrastructure, social policy, and climate programs. When asked whether she had the votes to pass the infrastructure bill, Pelosi replied, "We'll see, won't we?" Moving on, the attorneys general in 11 states sued the Biden administration to stop new rules requiring workers at companies with at least 100 employees to be vaccinated against COVID-19 or be tested weekly. Under the new requirements, which applied to an estimated 84 million workers, employers have until January 4th to make sure their workers are either vaccinated or produce a negative test every week. Workers who remain unvaccinated must wear a mask at work, and employers are not required to provide or pay for the tests. A second rule requires roughly 17 million healthcare workers to become vaccinated, but does not include an option for weekly testing in lieu of vaccinations. Employers could face penalties of up to $14,000 per violation. Meanwhile, the U.S. economy added 531,000 jobs in October, and the unemployment rate declined to 4.6%, a new pandemic-era low, but still well above the pre-pandemic jobless rate of 3.5%. The U.S. has now recovered roughly 80% of the jobs lost during the depth of the recession in 2020. Speaking of the pandemic, Pfizer's COVID-19 antiviral pill was found to reduce the risk of hospitalization or death by 89% in a recent clinical trial, making it the second pill to show efficacy against COVID-19. The drug also appears to be more effective than the Merck antiviral pill, which already received authorization in the United Kingdom and is currently awaiting federal authorization in the U.S. Both oral medicines attack the coronavirus by interfering with its ability to replicate itself. Moving on, the Biden administration sued the state of Texas over the state's restrictive voting law, alleging that it disenfranchises eligible voters and violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed SB 1 into law back in September, which banned 24-hour and drive-through voting. It also imposed new hurdles on mail-in ballots and empowered partisan poll watchers. Attorney General Merrick Garland said, "Our democracy depends on the right of eligible voters to cast a ballot and to have that ballot counted," adding, "The Justice Department will continue to use all the authorities at its disposal to protect this fundamental pillar of our society." The law is set to go into effect on December 2nd. Meanwhile, a federal judge questioned Trump's effort to block the congressional January 6 Select Committee from obtaining his White House records, expressing skepticism that a former president can overrule his successor's decision to release them to investigators. There is only one executive, District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan said, noting that a former president has no authority over either branch of government. The judge added, however, that she might curb some unbelievably broad requests for records, which go back as far as April 2020, regarding Trump's activities leading up to the attack on the Capitol. A former Trump Justice Department official, meanwhile, refused to answer the January 6 Select Committee's questions about Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election. Despite being subpoenaed last month to compel his testimony, Jeffrey Clark claimed that he couldn't provide the testimony until the courts resolved Trump's lawsuit, challenging the January 6 committee's access to his White House records. Clark cited potential executive and attorney-client privilege in order to justify his client's refusal to cooperate. The committee's chair, Representative Benny Thompson, said Clark's refusal to testify could lead to a referral to the Justice Department for contempt of Congress. In other news, an analyst who contributed research to the 2016 dossier that detailed alleged ties between Trump and Russia was arrested as part of a probe by special counsel John Durham. In a 39-page indictment, a grand jury accused Igor Danchenko of 5 counts of making false statements to the FBI about his sources in the so-called Steele dossier, which detailed alleged ties between Trump and Russia. The dossier was also part of the basis for a secret FBI warrant to tap the phone of former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, as the FBI investigated possible ties between the 2016 Trump campaign and Russia. Attorney General William Barr appointed Durham in 2019 to investigate the origins and handling of the Russia investigation to find any wrongdoing. And finally, the Manhattan District Attorney convened a second grand jury to consider charges in their investigation of the Trump Organization. Both District Attorney Cy Vance and New York Attorney General Letitia James previously indicated that they were examining whether the Trump Organization manipulated the value of its assets to get favorable loan rates or to lower its taxes. An earlier grand jury returned felony indictments against 2 Trump companies and Trump's longtime chief financial officer Alan Weisselberg, charging them both with tax evasion. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.